Number 10. Unexcavated ancient ruins. Most of Egypt's gold and riches were mostly undisturbed until recently in the 20th and 21st century. Many ancient discoveries have been found in Egypt, from the Great Pyramids, tombs of the Forgotten Kings, and even large structures like the Sphinx, all scattered around. And let's not forget about all that gold as well. All of it buried in the Great Sandy Desert. Now with the technology of the 21st century, strange anomalies have been found in Egypt, all detected via Google Earth. Using satellite images in the areas surrounding the Valley of Kings, objects have been discovered that resemble artificial structures erected in the middle of the barren desert. The origin of these structures is hugely debated in the excavation communities, and nobody knows quite what they are. Unfortunately, we can't excavate these structures right now due to the current economic situation in Egypt, and, well, of course, the lack of funding. What we know for sure is that these supposed man-made structures are not tall enough to be true pyramids, nor do they have the shape of a sphinx. So what could they be? A clue, proof of the Egyptian gods, temples, or it may very well be the key and the answer to one of our greatest questions of ancient history. How did the Egyptians fall from being one of the most advanced civilizations on Earth? We don't know. Sadly, we may never ever find out what they truly are unless we send in Indiana Jones to scout it out. Number 9. Ariel Castro's house. Ariel Castro was a despicable human being, and deserved nothing less than 1,000 years behind bars. He kidnapped 3 young girls and kept them as slaves between the years of 2002 and 2013. The first victim was 21-year-old mother Michelle Knight. The second victim, Amanda Berry, was 17 years old when she was kidnapped. She was turning 18 the day after. The third victim was 14-year-old Gina De Jesus. They were all taken in the same area and in the exact same way, kidnapped after accepting a ride into Castro's van. They were then taken to his home in Cleveland, where they were held in captivity and experienced things far too horrible to describe in this video. While some may brush this off as only sentimental terror, Google Street View passed by and photographed Castro's house during the time that the 3 girls were locked inside. The house is blurred and can't be seen by Google, and the only pictures of the house are those supplied by people who took them in person. For those of you wondering, no, the girls were not visible prior to the blur, but it's just so unnerving to see a picture of a house and realize that there were 3 kidnapped women in the basement. Thankfully, the 3 victims escaped in 2013, and Ariel Castro was sentenced to serve 1,000 years in prison. Unfortunately, he served his sentence short and hanged himself using his bedsheets. Number 8. Dog faking a murder. A gruesome murder was deemed found on Google Earth in the city of Almere, the Netherlands. Google Earth revealed a body lying on its side on a small pier in an unused area of the city. Additionally, there was what looked like a trail of blood in the images provided by Google, and many assumed this trail to be the murderer dragging the body from the grass onto the walkway before we can see the body on a nearby bench. For many, this is a pretty horrific crime scene to stumble upon, especially from above. Thankfully, someone came forward and said that it was just their dog, being wet from the water, which looked tinted and red when dried, and the body was just a random person laying on a bench. Maybe one day there will be a job to go over satellite footage to catch criminals in action. Number 7. Lake of Blood. Sadr City is a suburb in Baghdad, Iraq, which happens to be the location of several recent battles and bombings. Due to this, most buildings have collapsed in on themselves. The roads are littered with craters, and the few remaining residents have lost everything that they know. You know how environmentalists say that when pollution is left in the soil, it seeps into our natural water ecosystems? Unfortunately for the people of Sadr City, their drinking water has turned a bloody red color, as visible from Google Earth. Unfortunately, since Sadr City is a still semi-active war zone, environmentalists are unable to pinpoint exactly what has caused the dramatic shift in color, although there are those that chalk it up as being dyed from blood, a ghastly chemical attack, or even a sign from God, warning the people of the potential collapse of the Mosul Dam, which will kill thousands of people if it is to break. No matter the cause, the images remain a chilling look at the consequences of war. Number 6. Secret Swastika. Ever wanted to be an architect? I sure did. Designing buildings all day? Sounds absolutely amazing. But there are infinite ways of laying out a building or campus, so there's a lot of creativity to be had. Unfortunately, the US Navy designed their Marine base as a swastika, and honestly, it would be fit for the Nazis of World War II. Built in the 1960s, the Naval Amphibious Base south of San Diego is a giant government-funded swastika. Allegedly on purpose, the architect even rotated the swastika building 45 degrees to directly resemble the Nazi symbol. How this got approved in the 1960s, only 20 years after the war, is currently unknown. A 3D model is always required to be made first, and the architectural firm of Hendrick and Mock had definitely made a 3D model of the swastika-shaped building before presenting it to their head of development. Yet it was still approved by the Department of Defense. Both parties, the architect and the general who approved it, acted with the guilty knowledge to intentionally plan the building this way. And unfortunately for the military and the American taxpayer, the public backlash cost the US Navy $600,000 to redesign the building. This was a pretty embarrassing planning oversight from the Navy. Through Google Earth, we were able to discover this gem of a building. And while it's not really terrifying by itself, it sure does bring up some questions over our military leaders' ideologies at the time. Number 5. Dead son. Picking up the phone and hearing that your child, brother, or sister has died is a tragic and horrible experience to go through. But envision that you had the ability to see their dead bodies at a murder scene just by doing a quick search on Google Earth. The father of Kevin Barrera was in this exact situation. In 2009, 14-year-old Kevin Barrera was shot and killed nearby a set of train tracks in Richmond, California. Nearly 4 years later, his father found this image on Google Earth and was outraged how Google had done nothing to cover up the dead body of his son. After all, Google boasts about its algorithms which blur out anything of controversy, and yet their algorithm was unable to blur out an actual crime scene. Thankfully, Google heard his plea and accelerated the replacement of the image by redirecting their satellite. This was the first time that Google had ever changed course based on media attention, and it still took 8 days to update, which, believe it or not, is actually quite quick in the satellite industry. We can all sympathize with the father about the situation, as none of us would want to see our loved one's corpse photographed for the world to see. Number 4. Giant cat. Found in Chile, this ghostly image is identified as a plain standing cat. Rumors began to spread as users and tourists stumbled upon it on Google Earth, and soon strange stories emerged about its existence and placement. Some said that this was a landing strip for alien aircraft, and that this cat was an ancient deity that was worshipped between 1000 and 1400 AD. Unfortunately for us, this cat is just a weird art display designed by artists Dane Strato, Alexandra Strato, and Stella Constantinides to celebrate the desert landscape as a state of mind. Yeah, I know, pretty anticlimactic for such a strange and mysterious structure. Fun fact that this is the largest cat structure in Chile and possibly the world, measuring in at over 1 million square feet. Number 3. Anthrax Island. Officially named Gruinard Island, Anthrax Island is a Scottish island in the United Kingdom. Albeit sooner or later, Scotland might leave the UK after another referendum, but that's another topic. Over a mile long and half a mile in width, it was used during World War II to test biological bombs, some of which were British deployed anthrax bombs. What is anthrax, you ask? Well, there are many types of anthrax, most of which cause puking uncontrollably and the development of a horrible skin infection. The more severe and rare kinds of anthrax also cause severe breathing problems, shock, loss of appetite, the vomiting of blood, and severe diarrhea. This type of anthrax is pretty damn fatal. Anyway, Gruinard Island was a test site of sorts for anthrax and other biological weapons. For unknown reasons, although most chalk it up to general UK censorship shenanigans, the island is completely blurred on Google Earth. As an added bonus, the island is designated as uninhabitable, and civilians are barred from even sailing close to it. This begs the question, what could they have possibly done to that island that is so horrible that it isn't even allowed to be viewed from above? Whatever the British were up to on Anthrax Island, they were stopped shortly after the signing of the Geneva Conventions in 1954. Number 2. Arizona Airplane Graveyard. If you're an airplane nut and you would love to look at them all the time, these airplane graveyards might be the place for you. A military aircraft boneyard is very much like a parking lot of sorts, but for thousands of aircrafts. The Arizona Airplane Boneyard is located in the desert of Arizona, USA. For those of you who don't live there, Arizona is a very hot state. And in some places, the temperatures can go up to 42 Celsius or 107 degrees Fahrenheit. So why would you store airplanes directly under such horrid and hot conditions? Surprisingly, airplanes are naturally preserved in desert environments due to the low humidity. First opened in 1946, the Arizona Boneyard has held on to hundreds of B-29s and C-46 aircrafts, and even more modern planes such as the F-4 Phantom and the F-16. In total, the Boneyard has 4,200 aircrafts in its possession, which are valued at $27 billion. The terrifying part is that at a moment's notice, any of these planes can be repaired and get back into service with just a little bit of labor. So if the US is ever in need of planes while it's at war, they can easily increase their Air Force by a couple thousand, essentially doubling their entire Air Force fleet. Now that is the power of a superpower. Number 1. Gun pointed at Google. It's not often we see or hear about Google Street View cars being threatened at gunpoint, but when we do hear about it, where do you think it would happen? Are you picturing the war-stricken lands of Afghanistan, or in the favelas of Brazil, or the mean streets of Detroit? Well, yeah, it was Detroit. In 2012, one of Google Street View's cars caught a series of images of a group of young black men huddled together on a porch. As the streetcar passes, one of the men, possibly a teenager, appears to be pointing what resembles a shotgun at the Google Street View car. Google did blur the image of the person and the gun itself, but it's still clear what's going on. Interestingly, for those of you with a keen eye, there is a security camera on the top left side of the porch, which can mean one of two things. One, that the armed men are taking safety pretty damn serious, or, well, two, that these were gang members and the house was a stash of some sort, which would explain why they pointed a gun at the Street View car. Unfortunately, this point doesn't end right there. In 2013, the Street View car made another route of that neighborhood, capturing an image of the now empty house where a 17-month-old girl was found dead in the closet 1 year prior. The house is clearly the same and no arrests have been made related to her death.